Well, a little thing happened over the weekend. Maybe you heard about it.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left.
It finally happened. There are those within MAGA and even on the far left that are finally united in something. Why they now oppose Donald Trump.
Let's get ready to rumble! You can't handle the truth.
Hi, I'm Pastor Marty, and this is the Afternoon Drive. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and once you are, smack the bell, click the word all. That'll give you notification of my rants, my ravings, my undeniably flawless reasonings. Please like and share this video. It's the only way I can get the word out that we're here. Thank you so much for watching and being a part of the Afternoon Drive. Let me begin by saying a couple of things. Number one, I can support the president in what he did in taking out 3 Iranian nuclear enrichment facilities and still be opposed to a long, dragged out, prolonged desert incursion at the behest of Israel or at the behest of the military-industrial complex. I can be for what Donald Trump did over the weekend and oppose a long, protracted war. But let's take a little stroll down memory lane, shall we? Before we just blame President Trump for all of this, let's not forget Hillary Clinton supplied Iran with the uranium to enrich their nuclear program. Barack Obama gave them $1.7 billion that they used to fund their nuclear program. And then Joe Biden unfroze $16 billion in funding for Iran. And now somehow it's Donald Trump's fault. Of course, the Democrats, led by AOC and Bernie Sanders, have wasted no time in beginning to scream, impeachment, impeachment, because he has fill in the blank. Can you guess, boys and girls, what they're accusing him of? That's right, not following the Constitution.
We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, etc. This news that I've just heard, the second alarming that all of you have just heard, but it is so grossly unconstitutional. All of you know that the only entity that can take this country to war is the U.S. Congress. The president does not have the right.
Well, I hate to cloud the issue with facts, because, facts can ruin a perfectly good argument. But let's back the Bernie train up here a little bit. Let's back the Democrat fake outrage train up a little bit. And let's insert a few facts along the way here, shall we? Bill Clinton bombed Afghanistan and Sudan. Not a peep from Congress. George Bush bombed Iraq endlessly. Not a peep from Congress. Barack Obama bombed Libya. Occupied Syria, a sovereign nation that we didn't have any declaration of war with, yet we had an occupying army there, and we bombed them. We bombed under Obama, Iraq, Somalia, Yemen, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, as Obama likes to call it. And let's not forget that no other sitting president, other than maybe you could make the case under Roosevelt and Truman trying to bring an expedited end to World War II. But certainly no other U.S. president in what we would call the modern era, the 1960s forward, has taken out more civilian and civilian targets than Barack Obama with his drone strikes. In fact, they call it Obama's hit list. Not a peep from Congress. Joe Biden bombed Iraq, bombed Syria. Not a peep from Congress. Donald Trump takes out 3 nuclear sites, not military bases, no civilian targets, 3 nuclear sites underground used for the enrichment of uranium.
They're just using it for their nuclear program so they can have nuclear power plants.
You know, there are a lot of nations in the world that have nuclear power plants that do not enrich their own uranium. They buy the uranium that is needed at the levels that you would use in a nuclear power plant. Iran is enriching them far beyond what would be used in an actual nuclear power plant. And as Marco Rubio correctly pointed out, they are in the process of developing a rocket system, not because they want to go to the moon and do space exploration, but because they want to develop a ballistic missile with a nuclear warhead and hit targets around the world. I think we can all kind of put this together. And again, we, even on the conservative side, we're very leery of this because George Bush did lie us into a war. The weapons of mass destruction. But the truth is this, everybody knows about these enrichment sites in Iran, the number one sponsor of terror around the world. Let's not forget that, boys and girls. These are not nice people. The regime there is absolutely hell-bent on the destruction of Israel and the destruction of the United States. And again, we got some on the right that have lost their minds over this. Mark Dice, Candace Owens, that, you know, this is a betrayal to MAGA, and this is just simply Trump now doing Netanyahu's bidding, the bidding of Israel. But there are some things that I would like to point out, and I'll leave my biblical theological argument to the side, because I do believe, obviously, as a pastor, as a Christian pastor, that there is a biblical understanding of why we would want to be aligned with Israel. However, I do understand there is a difference between the Israel being referred to in Scripture and, say, the secular political Israel of right now, today. Got that. But let's be honest. Even if you're not an allied fan of Israel, would you at least acknowledge that in the Middle East, they're one of the more sane countries? That there is some understanding and decorum of civilized, practiced, and living. And these countries over there that are strictly ruled by, governed by those that have a militant viewpoint of a theocratic, under Allah, form of government. You're basically dealing with 4th century thinking barbarians that, you know, will behead people and do all kinds of other vile things. You get that, right? The regime that leads Iran has been at war with the United States since 1979, when they breached our embassy and took Americans hostage. And under the inept, piss poor, and yes, I use that phrase directly, piss poor, candy wimp leadership of Jimmy Carter, we were the laughingstock of the planet. because when he did try to send a Delta force over there to rescue the hostages, it was an absolute failure at the record levels of the Bay of Pigs in Cuba. And we've never really responded to that. Sanctions, yes. So again, I understand some of you are feeling a little bit betrayed, like, man, Trump gave in to the Lindsey Grahams and the Mark Levins. You know, Mark Levin on his show Saturday night. Don't you feel relieved? No, I don't feel relieved, because right now we're on high alert for terror attacks. But in full disclosure, full honesty, I think we have lulled ourselves into thinking that because we've written checks and we kind of threaten Iran and have never actually done anything, that we were staying safe. When in reality, these sleeper cells and these attacks that could happen at American airports and hubs, etc., could have happened at any point in time. And to constantly keep scolding the bully doesn't always work. I can admit that, can you? I don't want a war. I don't want a prolonged war. I would much prefer that we live in peace, and I will bring the Bible in here. The Bible says to live peaceably with all men, but there's another part of that verse that doesn't often get quoted, especially in liberal churches. To live peaceably with all men as is possible. You do know that there are some people that will not let you live peacefully, correct? You get that, right? And what we were supposed to do, wait for an Iranian nuke to go off in New York City before we finally said, Shazam, Batman, they do got one. He didn't level the country. He didn't level civilian targets. He took out the 3 locations where they were enriching the uranium. And as Marco Rubio correctly pointed out to the brain dead over at CBS News, if their nuclear program was simply about enriching uranium to run a nuclear power plant, why were they doing it 300 feet underground? We know why they were doing it in bunkers, which is exactly why Donald Trump sent the B-2 bombers over there with bunker busters, which were developed under the Bush regime, I might add. Now, the one thing that does give me pause in all of this is this.
The President and I have had our differences, which resulted in me staying out of the 2024 race. But I have to tell you, I couldn't be more proud of President Trump's decisive leadership in this moment, or the extraordinary professionalism and courage of our armed forces that brought about this historic mission.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Mike, the traitor within, you weren't on the ticket running with Donald Trump for 2024, not because you decided to sit it out, but because Donald Trump benched you. He didn't want you. And, the last thing we need is for you to be out there. That's that part of me that goes, I don't like the fact that in many ways this does give the appearance that Donald Trump has given into the deep state. See, they got him. They're controlling him now. Like we saw even in Donald Trump's first term, that no, he does not want protracted, prolonged war. But if he has to send up a few missiles and take out a military target like a Soleimani, he will. And let's not forget that there is quite a bit of inference. We haven't actually seen the evidence yet. Wink, wink, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, you were going to bring all kinds of things to light to the American people. But there's been a ton of inference that the shooter in Butler, Pennsylvania, that took a shot at Donald Trump's head and clipped his ear actually had Iranian connections. So make no mistake, I'm not going to lose any sleep over the president taking out the nuclear program of Iran. Now, I know some of you are like, oh, he's talking about regime change now. You do know he's trolling them, right? which is something Donald Trump does very well. I do expect Iran will probably try something, and then at that point, I think Donald Trump will unleash hell on Iran. But to say this is a betrayal to MAGA and to the core belief of Donald Trump that he really would much rather have diplomacy than war, you know, some of you in the MAGA right, calm down, breathe. Because whether you're on the left or the right of this issue, there is one thing I can say with absolute certainty. None of us knows everything that's going on behind the scenes right now. And just remember, the so-called experts talking on Fox News, CNN, PMSNBC. Well, it wasn't that long ago they were the experts telling us how the tariffs were going to raise our cost of living and create a recession. And before that, they were the experts on why you had to follow the science, mask up, gag up, and get in line to take love potion number 9. Breathe, relax, and on this one, we give President Trump the benefit of the doubt and we watch.